I'm talking every chance I get, whether it's smart or not, whether I'm on a bad memory day or not. I have a headache today. I've been off caffeine for 2 days and it's hurting my memory and I don't feel motivated or creative. But this is a subject I've wanted to talk about. That, you know what? I don't care if I make mistakes in some of my videos. Like I made a word mistake the other day talking about, and I didn't have time to review my videos. I don't have time. I haven't been lucky enough to be in a quiet place to study before I do these videos. But I talked about spiritual wickedness in high places, and that's not what I meant to say. I meant to say spiritual warfare. I was alluding to spiritual warfare, and spiritual wickedness in high places is a different thing. But spiritual warfare, Republicans deal with. They do have to deal with spiritual warfare and being deceived by tricky standards that aren't laws, but are sometimes standards for themselves that don't need to be imposed upon everybody else. And then they get into competition, and the devil's playing on that game. That's spiritual warfare. Satan's tricking them on those things to where they turn competition into a bad thing. And they make laws out of perfectionism, competing to be perfect. And those certain things aren't supposed to be laws. It's higher productivity. Sometimes it's less productive to be more productive. When you're being more productive, when you're working, let's put it like this: when you're working as hard as you can, or being a hard worker and working fast for the devil, and you end up working for the devil instead of for God, and you could slow down the pace and be working for God, it's not productive when you're doing it for the devil, even if you're working faster, right? So hard work, as long as you're working hard and working fast, that's all that matters. No, it isn't. You got to do good things. So, and in other words, you can't do things that's hating on your neighbors on just imperfections. But I wanted to say, though, that, freedom of speech, nobody has freedom of speech in America, almost, it seems. I've been told almost everywhere I go not to speak, and partly because if they hear me stutter once, if they hear me misspeak, or if I forgot something and I did my words, is that a new word? And I did my words differently, or mixed them up with like the spiritual warfare with spiritual wickedness in high places. Republicans battle that. So spiritual wickedness in high places, I would think, would tend more to be somebody who's against God, but is in a high position of authority, and or is a hypocrite. Like, and by hypocrite, I mean says they believe, but they don't, and they know they don't. It doesn't mean somebody says they believe, and and they still like sugar, and they give in to sugar sometimes. That doesn't make them a hypocrite. All right, that's for an example. That's not hypocrisy. That's carnality, carnal-minded being. And they gave in the carnal-minded maybe for a moment, or maybe 10 times in a year, and people can say he did it 10 times in a whole year. That's not much, really. It's a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it's not much in the grand scheme of things. So, so it's easy to judge people wrongly. Anyway, sometimes that's spiritual wickedness. That's spiritual warfare when we allow those kind of messages to add up and pick on little minor things and make it sound like the worst thing in the world when it's not. But the Ten Commandments, I don't mean to get off the subject again, but the Ten Commandments, that's why they're so good. I don't understand. And so this is spiritual warfare. All these churches falling for the fact that they minimize the Ten Commandments and act like that's Old Testament law, or they act like God only gave us that to prove we can't keep them, and so we could prove we're a sinner. No, God gave those Ten Commandments for governing, national governing. And if you look at them, there's no better laws to have. And it doesn't try to dictate every piece of food you eat, or what kind of medicine you think works for you. The doctors can't dictate that. They just like being a dictator and saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then they demonize it. And then it does look bad when people do it because it isolates them, makes them paranoid. I think you would get people looking at you. I think I can tell you had a medicine. I see it in your eyes, and they're trying to make stuff up, right? You can see that in somebody's eyes real hard if you want. If somebody does caffeine, and so we're being hypochondriacs and a little bit crazy and jealous because they broke a rule. They're getting by with breaking a rule. That's really what they're mad about, and so we can't commune together. And you can't commune together based on a rule that's falsified as a sin that the Bible doesn't say is a sin. If they're not misbehaving. If they're not drunk to a point, if it doesn't stop them from worshiping and going to church, or feeling, and within themselves, they have to know if they're not, even if they're at church, if they're not feeling meditative and prayerful, they've done it too much, then that's abusing it. But that's between them and God to figure out. And with you trying to dictate it, that doesn't really help them, not on the spiritual end of things. It just makes them be baffled and trying to fight for their rights and knowing what their rights should be when you're taking them all away. Okay, I'm stuck on that subject again. But anyway, this is a conversation. This video was supposed to be a conversation. I'm just doing it off the cuff here and trying to get something in while I have time, because I want to have conversations no matter where I'm at in my state of being, because time is short, and there's always something somebody can learn from. I like sharing knowledge. I've been in the streets. I've been in, and those used to be things I would keep more private. I'm thinking I'm tired of keeping that private. But I've been homeless and had it hard and in those ways, and I've seen the worst of it. I've thought about doing a Homeless Bob series and talking about the complications of being out there, especially if you have relapse at times. And it looks, and then you get robbed. You go out one time in 30 days or so, 20 days, 40 days, and then you lose. Their goal is, their job out there when they're hustling and doing something, is to steal everything you have when you go out. And then people think that people go out and just spend all their money on this. No, they don't. They just get robbed whenever they go out, because the system is set up for that. And everybody's like, well, that's what they deserve. And so it takes a long time to recover when that happens. And then you're exposed to you're running that hustle. If they're out there making money and all that, nobody has a problem with that as much as they do with somebody who doesn't have money and is not hustling to have money. And so they've tricked. We're talking about, are you working hard? Everybody talks about, you working a job, you're working hard, you're working hard. Well, to them, they look at that as a job. They're working hard. If you're not hustling and you're not trying to steal, you're not working. They actually translate the work. So talk about working for the devil. They're working for the devil and stealing and stuff, and hustling people, tricking people, seducing people, annoying people, setting them up when they go to the bus station to make it look like, when they're going to the bathroom, make it look like they're interested. They'll do all that kind of stuff when you don't want anything to do with it at the bus station. You're there to ride a bus. I'll say, why don't you do that at Walgreens, man? I'm trying to use the bathroom, and then they'll try to make it look like you're one of them, and to keep talking and make it look like you're one of them. And so they're telling on you, even if you're not guilty, almost in a way. So it's kind of crazy. That's not fair, but they're trying to, they get to go where they want and all that in the past. I don't know if they're cracking down on that now. But so that's one story of what people without a car deal with in homelessness in bigger cities. They're always having to cross those paths and try to ignore them, and then look like a snob, and then they're acting like you're rude if you don't give them money all day, every day, every time you go to take the bus, almost, right? At the station anyway, at a bus station. On the buses, it's usually people who did pay their fare, not always, and they're not doing it on the bus as much as they do at the stations. But anyway, I'm just saying, there's that example of, people act like, certain people aren't working this much, or they gave into a temptation after being tempted 1,000,000 times. They gave into it 2 times. That's not so bad, really, and when you look at it that way. But they never go after the tempters. They should be. And I'm be hated for saying this, but they should be letting these people loiter and scream across there, I got it right here, and then somebody finally smokes something and they get caught, they get in trouble. But the person screaming, I got it right here to sell you or whatever, they don't see that. And those people do it every day. There's the same ones there every day. They don't see that. So there's a conspiracy going on here. I mean, that's not a theory. What's up with that? Why are they just picking on the ones who finally give in to smoking or whatever it is? But those same people are there. Is that entrapment? They work for the police now, and the police are entrapping people, and they're selling drugs under the table, or what's going on? Is that the FBI, the CIA selling drugs, really? I mean, why not? So make it legal. And instead of having a concentrated form, have 2 leaves, and make a tea with it. Make that the standard, no more than 2 leaves or no more than 3 leaves. Instead of 100 leaves concentrated into one squeezed out into one concentrated form that's so strong, and you don't know the strength. They didn't measure the strength, and sometimes they do. Sometimes they put tricks. There's all kinds of tricks, but that's a big trick out there. But I talk about it because it's what exists, and but it's like taking coffee away from people. It's not a fair. It's not a fair law to outlaw consumption for people who have been pre-exposed. Now, and you don't want new people on it. You want to. I believe, on the other end, I'm having to tell you how crazy the hypochondria is on this subject. But if I had time to go into teaching about nutrition and how to stay away from it and why you should fear it even more, and not just the drugs themselves, but why you should fear, I would do it legitimately, not falsely, not with hypochondria and false exaggerations, or always acting like it's 100% of the time somebody dies or has a heart attack or whatever, or 100% of the time that people get fentanyl. But you don't want to risk ever getting something like fentanyl and dying right away. You don't want to risk something that's too strong and having a heart attack, and you don't want to risk if it's not too strong and you might be allergic and have a heart attack. You don't want to. There's no point in that. But there's all kinds of reasons not to use. But we never talk about the fact that they haven't made it safer. We don't hold our scientists accountable. We don't tell the truth about it. We lie about it to scare people away from doing it. And then people end up doing it because they don't believe our lies. And I say I'm saying the people who would promote not using drugs. And I'm that type of person. I fall in that category, actually, even though I've had I've been pre-exposed. So I'm one of those that when it comes down to it, I'm like, at the last minute when I'm tired of hearing all the BS. That's short for baloney and salt. BS. All right, that's my new word for it. Okay, so I'm not saying the little slang curse word or whatever. So BS, baloney and salt. So when they talk all that baloney and salt, anyway, let's go back to the subject. I should be allowed to talk. The cartels out there, they don't want me talking. They don't want. Okay, if you're homeless, they don't want you talking. If you don't have a degree in this specific subject, they don't want you talking. If you don't have that's churches say that too. Church people, they don't want you talking about it. If you don't have a doctor's degree, we don't want you talking about it. If you don't have the platform and you weren't given the floor to speak and give a speech and you're not paid to come in as a speaker, we don't want you talking about it. If you are in high school, you're supposed to listen to your teachers and keep your mouth shut, and listen to your elders and keep your mouth shut. I don't believe in all that. I do to a degree. You got to respect, you got to listen, you got to learn. I did all that, though. I did that. I'm 53 and I'm still here, and I shouldn't be talking. I shouldn't be talking because I'm not perfect yet. When you start behaving like a real Christian, then you can start talking. When you've quit and you've gotten clean, you should start talking then. But the problem is I don't believe, first of all, I'm a type who is a nutritional, for a long time, you could call me a health nut, and I'm into nutrition. I've done the experiments, though. I've done experiments more than most people. So I did sample and do the science and took risks on different caffeine products too, and which I think you should try to stay off caffeine products if you can. But I've used them to my benefit at times, and you always have the negative side of that because you have the withdrawal times. You have the it's not. I don't feel like I'm meditative and focused when I've used them either. So, but I've gone from I've used chocolate, tea, and coffee, and I've used chocolate to get off coffee. I've used coffee to get off chocolate, and I've used tea to wean myself off of both, and I've used chocolate and coffee to wean myself off of tea. But you can't. If I do too much tea, I obviously have some joint pain. It's obvious. I mean, I'm conscientious of knowing that I have a headache from caffeine withdrawal. I know when I've done it, and there's a lot of people they'll complain about headaches, and they don't realize, hey, you haven't had coffee in 2 days, and they'll deny it. No, it's not true. I just have migraines. And I've known people, and I've been around them enough to see when that happens, and they just don't want to admit that coffee has any problems like that. No withdrawals from caffeine doesn't really give you withdrawals. Only street drugs do that. How dare you try to promote street drugs and stuff like that because you're trying to disgrace coffee. And I'm not trying to disgrace coffee. I'm trying to show how ridiculous it is that people don't understand that the whole street drug thing and all that is a sabotage. It's a trick. It's scare people into hypochondria. And it's not because they're not dangerous, it can't be dangerous, but because you can make safe forms of any drug. You can make a safe form of it. to where it's 2% instead of 100%, and to where you're not putting it in the hands of people who are going to rape you, assault you, steal from you, knock you out, or threaten to knock you out once you take your first dose of something, rush you to take a dose so you speed and do it too fast. They do all those kind of things out there. That's psychological warfare. That's them playing the game, and then they promote. They don't want legalization either because they think they'll lose money because they can't steal anymore, not without being at least regulated about it. They can't extort people anymore and create slavery anymore, and all those kind of things. You can, if they steal from you, you can tell on them. It's no longer going to be unpopular to snitch if somebody steals from you, because that's your right to tell on it. What the word snitch came from, really, in reality, is not to snitch on people who sell drugs or do drugs because they thought it's a stupid law, and they're not wrong. It was a stupid law, but it's not regulated. It needs to be. So that if somebody's selling a drug or a natural plant medicine, they should have a license, right? But the system's not created for that, so you can't just go after them. We have to do what I'm doing. I live in America, and I'm allowed to contest these things. And I'm on this subject again, but I'm allowed to speak. They don't want me to speak. The church doesn't want me to speak. Some news media used to tell people, they'd echo and say not to speak if you're not qualified, or if you don't get cross your T's and dot your I's, and if you can mess up the way I just messed up and said it backwards. Cross my I's and dot my T's instead of cross my T's and dot my I's. If you can't focus and stay focused and get it right, and some days I can focus better than others, right? But I want people to see that. I want people to see there are people like me that don't have the best focus sometimes, don't have the best IQ, but I've studied this issue so well I can keep talking about it, and you're going to find me make one good point after another. Oh, I didn't realize that. That's true. I have some really true points that some people won't bring up, and they won't bring it up on purpose because they don't want you to figure out that their cousins are running this dope game in the ghetto or whatever, and they're making all this. They get all these benefits from it because they end up stealing clothes from the homeless that the homeless people are supposed to get. They jump in front of the line and get to pretend to be homeless while they're making money selling drugs or whatever it is, and the Democratic mayor benefits from that because he gets to do whatever he wants to do, and these people just filter the money through their families or whatever they do, right? They filter their families that aren't directly involved, that they get the money filtered through them from the drug cartels in the ghettos. And so the ghettos, by the way, so I've come up with saying the ghetto is not a culture. The ghetto is a neighborhood that's been taken over by the drug cartels, and they're really a slave to it. They get benefits, slaves with benefits. So they get benefits from it, but they stick with it. But they're also stuck in it, not just because the cartels, but because Democrats, in my view, and Republicans, falling for the Democrat tricks, have made it so it's hard to get a job somewhere else once you get a felony. And if they're stealing your license and ID and all this, and they're always stealing your phones, it's hard. You can't function in society without those things most of the time. I mean, you can if you're working under the table and you know the right people, but then then if you get caught, you're in trouble for that, So, but then whoever's hiring you to do those kind of things they can threaten you with that anytime, threaten with telling on you for that or whatever. You got to do what they say and be cool with them and comply with them, or else, they're the ones giving you money or whatever, but they can out you. It's not a good system. So the system starts with the bad drug laws. There's a better system has to come with the felony system. How about, calling a thief, somebody who assaults and is violent, call them an assaulter or killer, and calling each person separate. Don't mask it all with one, or don't marginalize it all with one title, felony. If somebody's dating a 17-year-old and they're 18, I wouldn't define them as a sex offender if they were dating at the same age, almost same age, and going to be married. In other words, I wouldn't diagnose them. They might say sex offender and be considered a pedophile, or people assume that's pedophile, right? And there's people out there that just love to assume somebody's a pedophile just because they like to hurt people and they want to somebody, oh, we can hurt this person. Well, all they were doing was dating a 17-year-old. In this state, it's against the law to being sexually involved with a 17-year-old, and they ended up getting involved, and he got her. She got pregnant by him. She was the 18-year-old, and he was the 17-year-old. And then but then they go to jail and they get tagged and looks and marginalized, almost like they're the ones that were picking on somebody who is not even developed yet. And that wasn't the story. That's not the case. So we don't. That happens with people, and I think we should be more specific. If if somebody has that kind of crime, you're still supposed to let it go through the system. You're still supposed to find out if a story is true. You don't just go after people. But anyhow, that's why you communicate. That's why I believe in communication, because I shouldn't look at everybody like they're an animal and we can't communicate to them. So some people choose to be like a soulless animal, which do animals have souls? I think animals go to heaven. Dogs go to heaven. So I don't know how that works exactly. So I believe in treating dogs good and all that and trying to communicate with them, by the way. But humans who love hate and love evil, love the devil, basically, love to steal, kill, and destroy, and don't want anything to do with God and don't want it to do with love your neighbor and don't want to learn, so they hate knowledge and they hate wisdom. They don't want wisdom, but you should be able to talk and share the way you want to, like I'm doing here, and share wisdom and knowledge, no matter if I'm dumb in a way. In some ways I'm dumb, I'm just not very smart, low IQ. I don't want to say that. I get kicked off Facebook for calling myself dumb, or kicked off YouTube for calling. That's crazy. That's the Democrats doing that. But I should be able to say what's dumb, what I think is dumb. Like, I do think it's very dumb that people don't understand this thing with that God made natural plant medicines, and you can have safe forms of them available, maybe as a tea with 2 leaves. That's not going to hurt somebody. And I don't know about that with heroin plant. I don't know much about the heroin plant. I know the coca leaf, 2 leaves is probably going to be like not as strong as a regular green tea, as a tea. But then they're making all this money off it because it's a good medicine. Apparently, it's a good for depression and it's good for pain. So, and it works well in those ways. So when you do it in the strong, concentrated forms, people like it because it feels good, because it's doing its job. But it's the tricky one because people can use that in the hustle game and keep people chasing it because they'll cheat them out of it. They'll make it a formula where it goes up and down so fast that they want another one because they felt like they were cheated out of it. There's kind of a lot of tricks that can be played with it. But if you make them into medicinal forms, then the tricks are gone. And this doesn't mean I'm promoting using it for the first time ever. My rule of understanding is if you never try spinach, you'll never miss spinach. So you don't want to try stuff risky. You don't want to use medicine if you're not sick, because you want to work to be healthy, and you want to be, I'm not saying to be proud and hate on sick people, but you're supposed to love your neighbor. God loves addicts, real addicts, not the ones we call addicts who just went out now and then and got robbed, or went out now and then and we don't even know about it because they don't mess up bad, right? But he loves addicts, even the worst ones. He loves everyone. And but the people God can't pardon them for. Forgiveness doesn't work, or there's no pardon. He can still forgive them, so they can still change their heart and repent. But the unpardonable sin is people who are hateful, who do reject the Spirit of God. You don't need a medicine to reject the Spirit of God. Some people use medicine and keep using it because they don't want to have to think about God, and they want to shield their conscience so they don't have to think about God, and they have no conscience for God, and so they use it a lot and they become addicted for that reason. That's a reason I've probably never been addicted before but I've done stuff. I've used medicine really properly. I've used it. I've gone to look for it properly and gone to the wrong places to get it, and then had problems and took my mind further than I wanted to go. and all those kind of things in one day, but I couldn't stand it and got right back out of it. I saw people stealing. I saw different things. I saw where it took my mind, and I didn't like that because so I got back out of it. I didn't steal. People steal from me bad enough. They want you to steal when they do that because they make so much money stealing. So they're steal from you. So they're trying to get you to steal. I've never gone to that degree, but it is forgivable by God if you do it. So you get back up and keep moving. It's hard to quit it because people want to judge you and keep kicking you down, and they want to stereotype you as always being that. And then it's like, why even try? Because these people aren't ever going to give me a second chance. Well, God's giving you a second chance. People don't a lot of times. But it's good in America. What's good about America? You can walk away, you can move away and try to go somewhere else and start over with a clean slate. And, just keep trying, because sometimes we are creatures of habit. So habits can be hard to break. But if you get a good break and good rest, true rehab is resting and staying away from those things. And but before I run out of time, I got to stop by 30 minutes at least. I didn't mean to go this long, but I just want to say I'm going to talk, and some days I'm going to have very well put together videos, and some of them will be 15-second videos. Some of them will be a minute or less, and those might be my most effective videos and well thought out, and I'm able to make a good point in a very short amount of time, and I'm good at those for some reason. But when I start doing this, which I didn't outline this one, then I can ramble and ramble, and you're hearing me analyze out loud and go down a trail here. But the society, we are brainwashed for 100 years, over 115 years, since 1915 or so, 1914 even, I think, that medicine is of the devil and all these things. And then if I say that they're not of the devil, people think I'm promoting use. No, I'm trying to teach you how to, if you have a problem, how to minimize it and learn nutrition and exercise and study, and like studying and analyzing. And mostly the way I stay away from it is because and the reason I want to talk is because I believe in Jesus. I trust Christ rose from the dead. I believe we're not promised tomorrow. I could die anytime. And I need to share. I want to share and build my rewards in heaven. I also want to make up some for when I've messed up. I want to continue to try to be productive and make up for, there's people I could have helped and didn't help. I've helped a lot of, I'm a pretty willing person to help folks, mostly with encouragement and a listening ear when I can. I've done that. I'm pretty good at that. But if I can help them financially, I could. But I've messed up a lot and couldn't help people financially at times when I should have been able to, had I not screwed up. And then I could have talked about God to them too, and either helped them confirm certain things in their faith. Even though I don't know it all, there's certain things I can help them confirm at times. And there's a lot of things I do know that I can help people confirm. And also, it might be their first time to hear it in a realistic way. I'm good at doing it realistic. I am not trying to be like a preacher and use that format. I am not that. I'm not trying to be what we grew up in school and did. I'm trying to be the casual type. I even am a nonconformist to that, and I want to sarcastically say I'm on purpose. I'm not respecting all the grammar rules and everything. I do try to do the grammar, but I can't respect it all if that's what I failed at on the SAT test. I mean, I've studied it my whole life, and I'm still not very good at grammar. But I work hard on that. But for some reason, I do. It's not just some reason. It's just who I am. I have a gift. I have a different perspective than everybody. But I may have a gift, in a sense, for a natural talent for being a philosopher and questioning and wanting to know the answer why. So I can help you. I can help me understand why I'm doing this algebra. And if I understand how it can help me in life, then I can actually figure it out all of a sudden. But if you're good at algebra, I don't want you to waste that talent. If I want to learn why it's useful, and be able to tell you, look, you got this talent, and you can use it for this in real life and helping people in life and survival and success. And we've never been taught that. We've only been taught the algebra by itself. And so that's a question. I don't know the answer to that on algebra, but on geometry, geometry helps you build things, right? I mean, and some people don't know that. They just know they have to learn the geometric figures. But I got to go because of time, or it won't upload. But it's okay to talk. We should be allowed to talk. Doesn't matter how smart you are, what your presentation is. I mean, how well you present yourself. I gotta go. I really gotta go. Adios.